Notice that down here there's a symbol that appeared when we created the skeleton for the particle system. This is called the particle flow source icon. And in some situations you might want to emit particles right from this symbol, but not here. In this case we want to emit them from this line that we sketched in. So what we'll need to do is drag in a position object node and drop it in between birth and display. I'll click on position object, and we need to identify an object as the emitter. Click on add right here, and then click on the boundary object. Now the particles will be emitted within this boundary. Scroll down and you can set some parameters for how the boundary works. Check separation and set the distance to 3 inches. Also check this option. That will delete particles if they're outside the boundary. Let's go back to the birth event here. By default, the particles will be emitted over a period of time, in this case from frame 0 to frame 30. Most particle systems change in time, but here we want them all to exist at the beginning. So set emit stop to 0. And we'll see all 200 particles appear. Let's increase that number to 1,000, shall we? We're displaying the particles with this node. Click on it and change the type from ticks to geometry. Now right now we don't have any geometry that it can display, so it's just showing the X's here. Drag in a shape instance node and put it above display. Select it, and then we need to identify what geometry we're going to use, what we're going to be instancing as particles. Click the None button and then press H to open the Pick Object dialog. Select Leaf, and now we are using leaves as particles. We can set some variation in scale over here. Let's give it some maybe 25% variation so that the leaves don't all look the same. Now at this point the leaves are all lying flat on the surface. We should rotate them. Drag the rotate node in here and drop it. Select it, and by default it has random 3D. And this might work just fine, but you can select other ways to orient if you like. I'll go to World Space and set the X rotation at 90 degrees. That will bring all the leaves up. And then why don't I turn on shaded mode by pressing F3. We can see the leaves here. Note that we also see the boundary object. I should hide that now so that we are just focusing on the leaves. Now, it would be nice if the leaves weren't all facing the camera to have some variation. That's called divergence. I'll set divergence at 25 degrees, and we can restrict the divergence to a particular axis if we want. I could say I want them all to diverge in the z-axis. Maybe I should boost that up more to 45 degrees. And I'll also diverge a little bit in X and Y. The idea is you should experiment with these parameters. You're not going to hurt the system just by playing around. Now to make this more interesting, let's put in a test. The tests are shown with yellow icons down here. I'll use a scale test. I'll drag that out and drop it above the display node and then click on it. So I'm going to set up the test so that if the scale is less than 100% with, say, 20% variation, it will pass this test. Now, what to do with it? Let's say it does pass the test. We need to put in some more information. This is the output of the test right here, and we can wire that to the input of another event. I'd like leaves that pass the test to have a different look to them. We can do that with the material frequency node. I'll drop that in here, and then I'll wire the output of the test to the input of this event, like that. And so whatever leaves are passing the test are currently being displayed as tick marks here. You see how that works? Now I'll click on this and change it to geometry. So it doesn't know what to do with those at this point, but it's displaying them as planes. Go to material frequency, and let's assign a material to these particular leaves that pass the test. Open the material editor and drag this material in here. Instance it. This is a multi-sub-object material that has 3 different leaf colors. They're identified by these IDs 1, 2, 3. I'll show that in the viewport, and let's change the percentages here. Let's say that material ID is 50%, material ID 2 is 30%, and material ID 3 is 20%. Now we're getting some color variation. The only thing left to do is increase the number of particles, and this will look much more realistic. I'll set the amount at 10,000, and that will take a minute to calculate.